So it's no secret that if you've seen my content before, I'm a big time Sonic fan. And I've reviewed this movie before. Admittedly, on both of the occasions where I did review this film, I gave it roughly the same score of 3.75 stars, or 75 out of 100. For those of you who are tier list purists, that's about a solid B. Because of this, and the fact that my overall score didn't change much, I still have it at B, but it's more of a low B, close to C situation. I decided to just get that out of the way and tell you why I think the way I do about this film. This isn't a straight plot synopsis, more of a list of key moments that affect my judgment. So, with that out of the way, let's discuss what makes Sonic the Hedgehog such a fun journey of a movie. The opening of the movie is fine, though the sudden freeze frame with Sonic explaining what's going on is a little weird to me. It doesn't take me out of the movie, but it does come off as a bit weird when Sonic only does this to set up the movie and to catch us up when we get back to where we were. The movie isn't consistent about Sonic breaking the fourth wall, something they got rid of altogether by the second movie, and in my opinion is all the better for it. Again, I don't mind this take, but I do wish it had a reason to be in the film other than that the director just had great success with a certain other film franchise starring a fourth wall breaking character. I'd also say that Tom's introduction could have been done a bit better. Sure, it establishes that he's bored with his current state of work, put a pin in that for now, but him just sitting in a car as no traffic comes by makes for a slow watch, which hurts a bit more when the title character is known for his unnatural speed. Granted, this is made up for when we actually get that night scene with Tom and Maddie, as it better establishes the duality of Tom's desire to do something more, with the fact that what he currently does is essentially a family tradition. I think this scene does more for establishing his character and goals. Also, little side note, but I also like the chemistry that James Marsden and Tika Sumpter bring to their characters, as it helps to sell the relationship their characters have, which is good considering how well they have to build off each other in the third act. Our next scene with Sonic does lead me to a bit of an obstacle though, and that's the way some of the CGI comes through in certain scenes. Now don't get me wrong, I will forever commend the special effects team over at Marsden Animations for fixing the blue blur from the nightmare fuel that he was before. Everyone involved deserves the deepest thanks, especially from us Sonic fans. The CGI on Sonic is great, but at times it does look like he's not really there. Which, I know he's not because he's a fictional character, but the point of CGI in live action movies is to convince you that what you're seeing is real. Granted, this is only in select parts of the film, so again, let's thank the special effects team for giving us a pretty decent product. I mean, in other areas of the film they had details of dirt on his gloves and used lighting effectively with the character, so what they did manage to do is really good. My only other real complaint with this movie is that it does have some plot holes and inconsistencies that are hard to justify. Dr. Robotnik is called in specifically to figure out what caused the power surge, and once he determines it's Sonic, tries to do whatever it takes to catch him. The movie ends with Sonic sending Eggman away, and the government rewards Maddie and Tom for keeping quiet about recent events. I'm just left thinking though, wouldn't the government still be after Sonic? Director Walters says the government just wants a formal chat with him, but what changed? The government now knows Sonic's not a threat to their society and the electrical surge was just an accident? Did Robotnik unearthing that the cause was not a terrorist attack but still pursuing Sonic mean he was going rogue and therefore Sonic did the government a favor? And what about Tom being considered a terrorist? Did that get pardoned due to Robotnik's interference? Sure, Robotnik did fire in areas crowded with innocent civilians and blew up the Sphinx, but him being evil doesn't just wipe away all the problems for the opposing side. I know a lot of this gets cleared up in the second movie with the creation of Gun, but I have to judge this movie based on its own qualities. From where I stand, there's just no justified reason for the government's change in perception of Sonic. Speaking of Sonic, we should probably get the biggest inconsistency in the room out of the way now, huh? Yes, Sonic getting hit by the tranquilizer dart in the first act is inconsistent with how his speed is shown in later scenes and does get the plot with Tom and Sonic going. I could try to logic this with Sonic being genuinely shocked in this moment and therefore not in the right mindset to react, or how his use of that level of speed only twice in the film probably means he can't constantly do it, but this would just be headcanon with little in the film to support my arguments. To me, this point is minor, but considering the plot ends here if Sonic isn't shot, I can understand why some people will be taken out of the film by this moment. Okay, negative points out of the way. Let's talk about the characters. Sonic is impulsive, always talking, and always has a need for speed. But he's also lonely. Despite his sometimes mischievous nature and taking a notebook used by a waitress, it makes sense when you consider that he spent 10 years on his own from a very young age. He's not doing this to be a menace, but more the fact that he probably has a limited sense of right and wrong based on growing up alone. If I had to compare him to the game Sonic, I would say that this one is more emotional, as evidenced by the lightning around him, but I think they got the core of his character down. He's always looking out for other creatures, he loves speed, and while he's sometimes a bit arrogant, he does do all that he can for what matters to him. Say what you will, but this Sonic is Sonic, no matter how you slice it. Now let's switch over to Tom. Like Sonic, he just wants to help people, but as I discussed earlier, he's debating doing something more. His arc comes to a head with Sonic pointing out that Tom has it good in Green Hills, which, while he isn't as informed about this due to his secluded life, is the fact that Sonic has such a secluded life that makes this moment so impactful. Sonic just sees basic human interaction and helping others as a good life, a very humble look at the world that reflects Sonic's state of wanting to belong, while also helping Tom to examine where he belongs and eventually choose to stay in Green Hills. Remember, his reason for wanting to leave Green Hills in the first place was wanting to make a difference, help someone in a life or death situation. And he found that in Green Hills with Sonic. Tom's arc is about realizing that where you are does not limit what you're able to do to help others. Jump-starting cars or cleaning gutters may not seem like a lot, but to the person you help, it means quite a lot. A pretty nice message from this film, actually. And now we move on to Robotnik. Admittedly, a YouTuber by the name of Phil Mento did a much better video than I ever could examining how Robotnik's and Sonic's character dynamics tie into each other and make for a good conflict, so I won't try to bring up every point. All you need to know is that Robotnik has a terrible history with people, and therefore trusts machines instead, while Sonic longs for just one person to have a connection with. While neither of these viewpoints change throughout the course of the film, this dynamic does allow for a good man versus nature conflict that really sells the idea of why Robotnik is the villain of this film. Not to mention Robotnik's Jim Carrey, so come on, you know that's going to be a joy to watch. So I could go into more detail with some of the other characters, but they don't really change much or affect the plot too much, so I'll just give them brief descriptions and call it at that. Rachel doesn't like Tom even though he worked 3 jobs to support her sister's endeavors, presumably before they were ever married, but this dislike is cranked up so far that it's pretty fun to watch, so I guess take it or leave it. Maddie. Not much more to say other than what was discussed earlier. She's supportive and her chemistry with Tom shines through in this film. Jojo. Realistic child reaction to seeing Sonic, and her kindness in thinking of Sonic and gifting him the classic red sneakers is a good step for Sonic's goal and arc in this movie. Agent Stone. Admittedly, gets better in the next movie, though his dynamic with Robotnik compared to Sonic's with Tom's perfectly showcases the differing personalities of the two. Also, just everything about this man is comedic gold. Wade Whipple. Stereotypical dumb cop, but he means well. And he nearly shot Robotnik. Seriously, why does he not get enough credit for that? People act like the Knuckles show would be bad because he's gonna be in it, but he's done this. What on earth makes this guy a bad character? Okay, sorry, ran over. Just put some respect on Wade Whipple's name. Okay, I think that's everything. Time to wrap up. The Sonic movie is by no means the best movie ever. As a Sonic fan, I admit I do have a bias to it, but the plot holes and inconsistencies are legitimate reasons I can see for why someone might not like this movie. That being said, I do feel like the main cast does well to bring out their roles, and I'm glad this movie did do well enough to get us more stories with the Blue Blur. Sure, I acknowledge this film may not be the quintessential Sonic experience, but it does make for a pretty good journey from start to finish. Thank you for watching. Have a God bless day, everyone.